Good morning, folks. Welcome to another edition of Now You Know. And this morning, I'm very fortunate to have, I think it's the second time you've been on the show, Christian. This is Christian Savage from Somerset Economic Development. And Christian, we've been working on this show for 2 months now, right? And between my schedule and yours, it's been hard to do, but we finally put it together. So welcome aboard. Glad to have you here today.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for the flexibility, because we're all very busy, and so I'm happy we could finally sit down.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, Christian, it's hard to know where to begin because you have a ton of things going on at Somerset Economic Development, and I think what we had talked about before going on the air and actually in emailing back and forth was that you kind of start out maybe by giving a brief overview of the different facets of Somerset Economic Development, and then we can get into more detail.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. Hello, everyone. So I'll call us SEDC, Somerset Economic Development Corporation. The acronym shortens it up quite a bit. So we have a lot of different areas of focus, a lot of areas that I spend my time on. Heavily 1 month or 1 year, and it kind of flip-flops, and it really is just project and program dependent, where I utilize my time. But yeah, we're heavily involved in all things economic development in Somerset County. So that's what we represent, is businesses and communities in Somerset County. It's just over 4,000 square miles, just over 50,000 residents, countless businesses and organizations and clubs. And so we're a private nonprofit. We were established in 1999, so we have our 25th anniversary coming up soon. Really to meet the needs of Somerset County, its businesses, and its economic development activities. In the 90s, really what created and informed the organization was a lot of different industries feeling there was just this gap in service. And so I'm the third director at SEDC, and I replaced Heather Johnson in 2018. And we've all seen Heather go and do great things at the state. So, we're pretty fortunate to have her on the line when we need her.
Yes, absolutely.
And so some of our areas of focus, a lot of my time is business development and consultation, and that can be helping a startup get off the ground. It can be helping an existing business grow and expand, utilize funding or programming programs, and access to capital and financing, and through that, most people are always looking for a grant. I don't have a grant vault in my office, so we have to get really creative. For-profit businesses have a much harder time getting a grant. Usually it comes with a caveat of a nonprofit applying on their behalf or being a fiscal sponsor or something like that. So we do serve as a fiscal sponsor for other nonprofits who don't have their exempt status clearance yet, or new businesses or clubs. And so that's a heavy lift. We'll do business planning, financial projections, and really get them ready to approach a bank or a credit union. We also work in broadband, trying to increase fast internet service in Somerset County, which is difficult because outside of the greater Skowhegan area, the population density really drops off. And so that's been our biggest challenge in getting new networks built, is the customers aren't there in a close enough area to make a business model successful. So there's a ton of funding for that now, and so we've made some really big strides, and we can get into that later. We also help with workforce development, and that again is connecting businesses with state programs, and it can be tax incentive programs or training programs. We do micro lending, and so that program originated. We were finding a lot of businesses didn't have a down payment for a commercial loan. That's where we came in and kind of funded that gap, or we call it a bridge loan, to get them there. From there, that's really evolved into not just gap funding, but larger loans to businesses and organizations. And we're utilizing some new state grants to help really grow our lending capacity. So we can talk about that too. And then, really quality of place or recreational opportunities or outdoor recreation is great to do too, because we all work hard. we like to play, be outside, really enjoy our natural assets that I think were really highlighted during the pandemic. You saw a mass exodus from the cities into areas like ours, and I think most of us really appreciate what we have here. And so how can we fully enjoy that? And it can be ski mountains or trail systems, hiking, biking, and water, river activity. We have countless lakes and ponds. So in a nutshell, that's what we do. And there's, every day is different, every month is different, every year is different. And, when I first started, it was kind of getting familiar with my role and reaching out to some people and fielding calls and intake forms. Now it's the intake emails and calls are very hard to keep up with. So we're staff of myself and my administrative assistant, which is part-time. So we run a really lean ship, and we like having this local sense, and when we work with someone, we really partner with them to help their club or business succeed, and really enjoy what we do.
Well, you're an executive director of Somerset Economic Development during exciting times.
Yeah.
I mean, there are more things going on in the last year in this area than I can recall in my lifetime.
Yeah.
And I go back a few years. And so it's really been amazing. Certainly in Skowhegan, I mean, you and I know you're on the board of the river park down there. They've gotten some grants, and it's pretty exciting as they kind of move towards their goal there.
Yeah.
But looking at, SAPI, the investment that SAPI is going to make, looking at the major investment that New Balance is going to make, looking at the where the Solon manufacturing was, where Bigelow Brewing is going to be, and apartments and hotel, and just a lot of stuff going on here in Madison. Timber HP, with that, I mean, that's very exciting. With their wood fiber insulation, and it's and they're going to eventually employ somewhere near 200 people, I think, 100 something to 200 people.
Yeah.
So, and that's just a few things.
Yeah.
But those are major things going on, as well as down in Skowhegan, the new school and so forth that's happening down there, and it's unbelievable. You want to comment on any of it? And how have you guys been involved in those projects?
We're actually involved with everything you just mentioned, and so that's great. I think people are aware that we exist, and that we can help them. And I think I'll speak to Skowhegan first. It's, as you mentioned, I grew up in Skowhegan. I moved away and went to college, and came back and raising my family. But it's very, very exciting times. I think with in terms of the manufacturing in Skowhegan, we have a world-class paper mill in SAPI, which are few and far between now. You can see their investment in that facility just boasts confidence in their employees and their ability to meet new market demands and products. And you're seeing them change their production to meet their new market demands, versus opening something else somewhere. So SAPI is a huge, obviously, player in Skowhegan, huge employer, huge tax contributor, and they're reinvesting. And so we look at it, we're like, this is one of the best run facilities in the world, and it's right in Skowhegan. And we all know dozens, I'm sure, of employees there, and you can start your career there and finish it and be paid handsomely during it. And so it really puts us on the map, in terms of New Balance. And so Somerset County is kind of an anomaly. So there's a talk of manufacturing, bring it back. If you actually look at Somerset County, that's our largest industry. Now it's skewed by SAPI and New Balance alone, right? But so we're fortunate with that. You mentioned Timber HP coming on, so that'll really just add to that manufacturing base. But New Balance, again, a global leader, probably the best at what they do. They're still privately owned. They have a community mindset, and they treat their employees well. You don't have to have much training going in. They'll train you on their own equipment. There's a ton of room for growth. And with their expansion, in a meeting in Augusta with them a few weeks ago, they're essentially quadrupling their facility.
Yeah.
And they'll be bringing 200 jobs on.
And that's starting soon, right? I thought I saw May or something somewhere.
Yeah, I know they're doing groundwork, water work, drainage, stuff like that, which is typically the first step. Yeah. But they're gonna jump on this quick, and they're confident that they can meet this employee need and demand for a locally produced product. And with the pandemic, people started exercising more, right? Everyone was cooped up, and I know they saw a spike in their sales. But usually, once you start buying New Balance, you really just keep buying New Balance. It's a great product, and they have different quality scales on shoes. You can get really expensive ones or cheaper ones for more fashionable ones. But no, a great company, and we're happy to have them here. But in terms of Skowhegan, I look at a lot of the work that's been done in the last 20 years. And so I think what you're seeing now is a lot of that finally blossoming. You mentioned the River Park. That's been, planned for almost 20 years. I think Christina Cannon at Main Street's done a great job and has really propped that project up publicly so people know about it, they're excited about it. And then that's an aspect where you say, okay, what will drive someone to come live here? And it can be the jobs at New Balance or Sappi, but what else is there to do? We don't work 7 days a week, or hopefully most of you don't. And something like that recreational experience right in downtown has a lot of people excited, for sure.
Oh yeah. Going back to New Balance, I mean, one of the things that's going to happen there is they're going to need 200 new workers to staff positions. And I know one of the things that Somerset Economic Development does is workforce development. And where we're going to find 200 people
it's going to be a challenge
to staff their needs.
Yeah. So that came up, and actually that comes up now in most of my projects. All right, let's get it going. Let's find the financing. Get into construction, and then that conversation quickly changes to where you're going to find your workers. Because we're not busting at the seams with new residents. We enjoyed some during the pandemic shift, but and so one light out there is our workforce participation rate is lower than it ever has been, and it was low pre-pandemic. It was about 40% of those who could work were of working age weren't. Yeah. Now that's like 50%. Yeah. And so a lot of people came out of the workforce during the pandemic. Either they took early retirement, they're working for themselves. So, a lot of parents are staying home watching their kids, but there's a huge chunk of that population that is baffling all of us, right? What are these potential employees or workers doing? How can we get them back into the workforce? I'll be working with the state on a workforce grant coming in June, focusing just on that. Yeah. And so, we're working with state agencies and workforce development boards, trying to, we call it re-entry. We want them to re-enter the workforce because, as you mentioned, 200 jobs at New Balance. Sappi's always hiring. Close to 200 at Timber HP. We're working on a plywood mill in Bingham, over 100 employees.
That's right, and I forgot to mention that one too.
And so that's all within a 30-minute drive. Yeah. And so, I think we can make big strides with that and hopefully fill those positions. And now we're talking, okay, what are the other incentives to go work for you? Is there a child care center on site, or is there a stipend for that? Benefits are great, but, Timber HP got a DOT grant for carpooling and van sharing, they call it. Okay. And it wasn't limited to just them. It was for businesses and manufacturers in Somerset County. And so, if you don't have a vehicle or you can't drive, can we help out with that? Can we point you in the right direction for childcare? And that's all just to get them to walk through the doors and punch in, So big hurdles for sure. But
And
when that conversation changes, I said, that's a great problem for us to have, and we're trying to figure it out, and I think we'll get there.
So you guys are going to play a role in that. I mean, has New Balance or Timber HP or any of those come to you directly and said, help us find some workers, connect us?
Yeah, Timber HP has been really great at everything they've done thus far, in my opinion. But I believe all of their hires to date are Mainers.
Yeah.
And it'll get trickier. They're hiring their management and executive team and supervisors. The production employees will be a little bit more difficult. But yeah, we try to connect them with resources. It can be, we have a close relationship, so it can be an email or a text bouncing stuff off the wall. But I will say the owners and their management team are very impressive. And if I'll send them an opportunity, usually it's not the first time they've seen it. So they're very forward thinking, and I think they'll do great. So. How
is Timber HP doing in their hiring? I mean, they're gradually ramping up right now. So
I think they have. It was at least 40 last time we spoke, but I think it's close to 60 now.
Yep.
And they'll be bringing on another 60 this year. So they're slated. They're in the construction process still with Chimbro, but they're slated to start production. It was sometime in April. That's probably shifted a little bit, but it'll be before summer.
Yeah.
And that's exciting. I mean, a new sustainable product. We all use insulation.
And unique to, as far as I know, still unique to the United States. They've been doing this wood fiber insulation over in Europe for years, but unique to here, although I assume that's going to change pretty rapidly.
Yeah, I mean, the closest thing to their product now is Rockwool, and or mostly Roxol. And if you've gone from using fiberglass to that, it's life-changing, right? You can still get irritation with Roxol. This product is new to North American production. I think it's over an $8 billion industry in Europe. But they don't use insulation like we do. It's a lot of mortar and actual brick, and not as much insulation as stick-built homes we all live in.
Right.
So the market's even larger here. And so they're ahead of the game here. They have great connections with wholesalers and suppliers and purchase contracts. And, it'll be a Maine owned, a Somerset County owned product, run and owned by Mainers. Mm-hmm. And it's really going to change the dynamics, I think, of the insulation world in North America, but obviously in Madison, obviously everywhere else in Somerset County.
Once again, going back to the workforce issue, and I'm just adding up numbers here of what these businesses are going to require for new workers, and trying to get it all just out of Somerset County seems kind of problematic to me. So obviously we've got a lot of immigrants coming into the state, and there's that whole period of time where they have to live here for a period of time before they can start working and so forth. Mm-hmm. Is there any thought towards potentially tying into that eventual market to fill some of the
I think everyone's open to probably pretty much anything in terms of finding employees. I know Backyard Farms, a lot of their new hires the last couple of years were immigrant workers, and their production levels are very significant. You've seen Backyard Farms purchase former motels and buildings for housing for them.
Yeah.
And so that'll come into play. I mean, we'll see how that grant works out with the state, but that's a portion. We're naming it the Somerset County Retention, Reentry, and Attraction Workforce Initiative. Yeah. And so we want residents or people from outside of Maine to come in. We need to fill this population and workforce gap. We want to have our current residents re-enter the workforce, and we want to retain our young, skilled residents to stay here and contribute to our local economy. So it's
you got your
a big task
trying to do this. But they're going to be, within the next couple of years, those businesses, and particularly New Balance, are going to have to find those workers.
It's close to 1,000 jobs in production.
Yeah, there's a lot going on. So, and the other thing is, is housing needs. You kind of brought that up a little bit, but we have new housing going in on the River Road between Skowhegan and Norridgewock. For those of us go a long ways back, it used to be the Women's Reformatory years ago. And that area, and there's a new building going up, and looks as though it's almost pretty much complete. It's getting close. And then Sam Height and a partner are trying to do a housing development. It sounds as though that's going to happen here in Madison hopefully that'll be able to house some of the people who come in the area to work.
Yeah, but it's not enough.
Not enough.
I mean, it's difficult now, and we know a lot of people who sold their home because the price was right.
Yeah.
Thinking they'd rent for a little while, and they're having a difficult time finding any place to rent, let alone build or afford it, or purchase another home. Yeah. And so just for the population we have now, obviously housing is very difficult right now. So bringing in close to 1,000 production workers in the next couple of years, housing will be a major issue. Yeah. And so we find with that, there's, KB Cap's doing, a complex in Skowhegan. That's a little trickier in terms of housing, because either you want to do it or you don't, and there's very few firms who just go around building housing units. Usually it's some type of developers who have a mix in their portfolio, but it can't come fast enough.
Yeah. Well, you would think that some aggressive entrepreneurs out there would see the need, and I think they are seeing the need, and particularly in light of what New Balance is doing in Skowhegan, that you're going to have, I think, some more housing, because I think you're going to have to bring in some more people to occupy all the jobs that they're going to create. Yeah. So. Yeah,
I mean, pre-pandemic, and I hate using that word because we say it every day, but there was that profitability in that for some developers, right?
Yeah.
Now a lot of that margin is really shrunk just from building materials. New code requirements are really beefing up costs, and so it's not as lucrative as it used to be. And you can't find an old property to fix up cheap anymore because there aren't cheap properties anymore on the market. And so it's we're really at a crossroads with housing of how much subsidy can we try to attract, which the state's done a pretty good job. I don't think the total amount statewide is large enough to make huge impact, but I mean, I think I believe they're at 40 million plus in that program, and it was an attractive loan program. But it was still, your return on investment on housing or a development project like that is pretty much twice what it used to be. So can you put your money in something else? Put your money in housing and hope you can keep it full. And by the way, that's extended 30 years now instead of 15 to 20, where you used to recapture your investment.
Well, if there's money to be made in this, and there's a real need, then somehow it's going to happen. I think. But whether it happens quick enough to accommodate business growth around here, I think
there's a time crunch.
Yeah, there's a time crunch.
I think people who understand the whole complexity of it we're already way behind.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm thinking.
Because you can't throw these up in a couple months. It's a year or two. Larger developments are 2 to 3 years.
Either that, or we're going to have to bus people from various areas to get them here.
And a lot of manufacturing, you see it at BIW or these paper mills. It could be Sappi or J. Typically, those workers will commute an hour, or at least an hour. It's just part of getting to work for them. We're hoping that mindset is still there, and with Timber HP or the plywood mill or New Balance, and I think maybe the difference is your annual salary. Is it worth driving 2 hours a day? That'll be dependent upon how much you make.
Yeah, so. That's right. Well, fortunately, some of these employers pay pretty well, and I think New Balance, in terms of wages and benefits, are considered to be
the total package is a livable wage, and incredible opportunities for growth. And we are talking with them on some additional benefits in terms of childcare or transportation, because I told him frankly, you have a lot of competition right now for these employees, and so I think and I hope you'll see that with a lot of these employers. It's not just about your hourly wage or your salary. It's some other things that will need to take place to attract the right people.
Well, particularly what's going on in Skowhegan in terms of quality of life things. Certainly the River Park would be one of those things going on, but a lot of stuff going on, really, that hopefully you have those types of things that improve the quality of life that will attract people to come into the area and work, I hope.
Yeah, I think so. I think the River Park really started a lot of this conversation in Skowhegan. I think the Gristmill and Main Grains also started that.
Yes.
Amber Lamke and her group really.
And she's talking about a new operation, new
she
structure.
Can't stand
there.
still for long, so she's got another project.
No, she's got another one going on. So.
But really her vision in the early 2000s of redeveloping this former jail, on paper or in a conversation, people weren't getting it. They couldn't visualize it. And her smaller group did. And you look at that area now, and she's really obviously improved the property and is a significant employer in the area, but really rekindled the entire Maine grain or the grain industry in Maine.
It did, and everything are spin-offs of these things. And it's created a lot of enthusiasm for people to go ahead in other areas as well. And that kind of takes me over to Bigelow Brewing and their vision with the Solon Manufacturing Building. Of course, they have another entity that, tell me who that is, I forgot that, from Bangor.
Yes, High Tide Capital.
Thank you. High Tide Capital, which now owns the building, is going ahead on that. But I think that happened in part because Bigelow Brewing folks bought into the renaissance of downtown Skowhegan, and they wanted to be involved in it, and saw that opportunity, and thank God High Tide Capital came in, who provided the money behind the vision to make that thing go ahead, and that is, it may not be the biggest project going on in Skowhegan money-wise, but is the most visible project going on. I mean, I drive by there several times every day. And there seems to be a lot of stuff going on there. And what involvement do you guys have in that?
We've been involved since 2018 with that. So Jeff and Pam Powers looked at that site and saw a few things. They saw the traffic count daily. So they wanted a presence downtown. So their facility out on Bigelow Hill, I'm sure most people have gone. If you haven't, make sure to stop by. But it's just this ambiance and aura out there is just really fun. A great craft beer, great family and owners, and so they wanted to share some of that downtown and kind of feed into the renaissance, if you will, in Skowhegan. So a downtown location made sense for them. But early on, that project wasn't about their second spot. It was more about, this building really needs to be redeveloped. This is a community project, and the fact they could have a spot downtown was just, icing on top. So they really viewed it as not a entrepreneurial profit gain, really a community development project, and that's why we've spent so much time with them with that. And we've helped with the purchase and acquiring that property. Finding funding, finding TIF dollars and federal and state dollars. And, there was major things needed in that building. The first was a roof that was in disrepair.
I think they took care of that already, right?
And so that roof replacement cost doubled the first year of the pandemic. And then the overall construction cost doubled as well. And so now they had a decision. How far do we want to go into this? Can we do this? And so, we looked at local investors and partnerships, and it was hard to move the needle on a project that large.
How did High Tide Capital come into the game? Do you know that?
Yeah, they were. It was really a state connection at a state level.
Yeah.
They were having conversations across the state. And, for a lot of economic developers, it's usually you want to know what sites are available or what could be available if someone comes knocking. And so the state was well aware of the spinning mill on Island Ave. And
Heather Johnson have anything to do with that?
she may have.
Yeah, just to guess.
And so that connection worked out good because the success for that project really relies on tax credits, historical tax credits, energy efficiencies, and a lot of cash.
Right.
And running could be low-income housing or workforce housing. And so High Tide Capital, that's the game they play.
Okay.
They've been very good and successful at it. And so they kind of took that off Jeff and Pam's shoulders, saying, look, still have your spot down here.
Yeah.
Let us do the development. And it's been a great partnership. So, they're building out those units. There'll be a hotel, I believe, on the first floor, maybe a little bit of the second, and then housing units on the second and third and fourth floor. It's got a wonderful roof deck, which we're hoping for public access, but it sounds like it'll be the residents of that building. But that'll make it very attractive units. And so, yeah, as you mentioned, the construction has been going on for quite some time. A lot of the framing's going on and the utilities and services like that.
Yeah.
So with that partnership, Bigelow still gets their second location downtown. They just don't have to deal with this, monstrosity of a development project. And, now they can share their product with, locals, obviously, but the 20,000 plus cars that drive by a day. So
What's nice is with High Tide Capital is you've now got the money behind it, and you've got somebody that can just push ahead with it and get it done in a time frame. And I think they're looking at having it all done in next year, right?
Yeah.
And open, and it's a massive project to
Well, so that
building.
creates some new opportunities and challenges. All right, so now you have maybe 100 plus downtown residents,
which is good for the businesses downtown.
which is great. Now, can we have those businesses stay open later, or
Right.
is there an opportunity for new businesses to come downtown to cater to those needs of the residents who ideally want to live downtown so they can walk to everything, right?
Well, I've always thought that to have a vibrant downtown now, you have to have people within walking distance.
Yep.
And years ago, when I actually was on the other economic development, Skowhegan Economic, we were trying to get some interest in upstairs
Right.
living to have more people downtown. I guess we were a little ahead of our time. We couldn't quite get it done the way we
They're
wanted.
still looking at it. I mean,
Yeah.
the new code requirements and these connected buildings downtown
Yes.
make it for an enormous challenge.
Well, that was the idea behind that Renaissance Center and the elevator and the ADA and so forth, to connect those upper floors and make it so that you could have those situations.
Yeah.
But as I said, we probably and a lot of that had to do too with the success of what was run of the river at the time, and of course that project took longer.
Yeah.
But now maybe finally all this stuff will start coming together, which would be really nice.
Yeah, I mean, there's two properties downtown for sale if anyone's interested in developing them.
Yeah.
One is enormous and could tie into the Renaissance Center.
The bank building, the old bank building.
No, actually, it's three. So
Three,
the old bank building is.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep on top of the market. It
Yeah.
changes daily. But so there's that opportunity, and I know the Main Street Group and the Skowhegan Economic Development Group is looking at that, and usually, much like the spinning mill, it needs a developer willing to invest and not seek a return very quickly, because it's very expensive to do any of that. But I agree, success of a downtown long term is residents downtown. You have your customers right there. It can be a convenience store or a restaurant or a gift shop, and you have your clientele right there who would rather walk the sidewalks than hop in a car and go somewhere.
Well, hopefully we'll start seeing people recognize their opportunities downtown because of what's going to happen over at the Bigelow Brewing Building or the Old Solon Manufacturing Building. If you get those apartments full and people downtown with a quick walking distance across the bridge, they're going to be looking for things to do.
Yeah. I think in 2 years, downtown will look much different. Between the spinning mill, there's a couple other properties being redeveloped. Hopefully, Run River is in its final stages by then.
Yeah.
And I think downtown Skowhegan will look much different.
Yeah. Well, let's hope.
Yeah.
Let's hope. But
Yeah.
I think the building blocks are in place here for that to happen.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But exciting projects, exciting times going on. Hey, one thing you mentioned was what was going on up in Bingham, and
Yep.
I think we'd be remiss not to discuss that.
Yeah, so we're working with Maine Plywood, and we got a call in mid-2020 from a importer who imports high quality. It's kind of like a veneer. It's a thin plywood. He's been in the industry for 30 years. Once manufactured that product, and the factory was lost in a fire in Canada a few years ago. So since he had been importing that product from Asian markets, as duties from the federal government started kicking in that area, the price skyrocketed.
Yeah.
As the pandemic unfolded, global shipping was disrupted. Shipping containers were on a shortage, and so he couldn't meet his order demands. The price was skyrocketing. He had to, much like other suppliers, had to carry it over to his customers. But that's when people were spending their excess cash on home projects. So that didn't really slow down, And we were all willing to pay what we could afford, even though it was twice what it was the year before. And so he'd always wanted to reopen a plywood mill. And so we started looking at sites, and we kind of had to do our due diligence with him and see if he was for real, and he was. So he, much like Timber HP, it'll be a new product to North American production. If you look at plywood production from the 20s and 30s to probably the 60s or 70s, the United States was here, the Asian markets were here, and since they've flip-flopped.
Yeah.
And so, everyone talks about manufacturing coming out of our domestic pipeline, and it has. So we're always thrilled, when someone wants to introduce a new product, to North America, United States, Maine, or Somerset County. And so we found him a facility in Bingham, and it needs some work.
Yeah.
But it used to actually be a veneer mill. So this plywood is
Quimby?
It's a Quimby mill.
Yeah.
And so that had sat dormant for well over a decade.
Yeah.
It had a lot of history. And so, we hopped in with him. Right now they're in the construction phase. He's purchased a lot of production equipment. None of that comes cheap, and sometimes you pay more to reassemble it than you do for the piece itself.
Sure.
But he lives in Chicago and really leaned on us for local involvement and connections. And so for months and years now, we've facilitated really his capital stack, we call it. So yes, we need a traditional financing mechanism with a bank or a credit union. But we've connected him and got funding from Maine Technology Institute, Maine Rural Development Authority, Coastal Enterprises, KV-COG, our organization, the county, and we're awaiting a couple other federal grants. And so in our eyes, he's put in his personal investment, and now we're just connecting the dots to kind of fill that gap. And so he would be looking at, I think our new number is around 140 production workers once he hits 3 shifts.
Yeah.
And so you have to shut down. You see it all in paper mills to conduct maintenance and cleaning and stuff like that. But a lot of those machines are built just to run. And so if he can just keep producing, a good thing with that is he's going to make it out of poplar, which is a really beautiful wood. The characteristics are really nice, but it's undervalued and it's underutilized. It grows really thick and not to the size of some other softwoods. So most local harvesters leave it, or they'll cut it and pulp it. Yeah. But so his performers include paying a premium for these quality logs. So your local logger, instead of pulping some of this poplar, can get twice the price for it if they can ship it to Bingham. So it checks a lot of boxes. You know, it's new investment in redevelopment of a former facility, new production jobs, new product to North America, and we have everyone across the state, you know, chipping in and helping. So, you know, the collaboration is great to see, and you know, we hope he can open up next year.
So that's the timeline, trying to get up at
Yeah,
next year.
I mean, we've had some self-inflicted deadlines, I guess, and it's equipment needs, or try to find some circuits for three-phase power right now, you know, or transformers. I mean, things are years out. So, you know, a boiler system you can find, you can't get the parts. You know, a new three-phase electrical system. Some of the circuit boards are 12 to 18 months out. So it's kind of a waiting game on some of these supplies. And you see that with automobile manufacturing, right? There's one piece they can't get. So they have all these vehicles sitting on a tarmac.
It seems to be getting better now, finally.
Yeah.
But, well, going back, the worker thing, and so we're talking 140 workers in Bingham.
Yeah.
Where are they coming from?
That's the question we've been fielding since we've kind of jumped over the initial hurdle of this project.
So I see that as one of the key issues to make things work around here. We got to find them.
Yeah. Well, so ironically, you know, we have a problem in new forest product employment opportunities with timber HP and hopefully main plywood 20 minutes apart.
Yeah.
Looking at 300 to 400 production employees. Yeah. So the rest of the state is starving for new forest products. We feel pretty good. Yeah. But again, we're shifting from that to, okay, how are we going to find these workers? So, you know, his plan is to hire as local as possible. Yeah. You know, the Bingham area needs jobs for sure. We feel pretty confident they can fill first shift and maybe second shift. That third shift will be a little trickier. But again, it goes, you know, his plan is to offer quality and quantity and incentives and bonuses. And his benefit package looks really attractive. And, you know, he's looking at a housing or child care perspective, whether he can do it or not. But again, we're now in a time where the employer needs to meet the employee in order, one, to find them, and two, to retain them.
Well, this would be fantastic for Bingham. I mean, when's the last time we've had anything of this magnitude happen in Bingham?
It's been a long time.
Yeah, and
they're kind of the gateway for the recreational trail system now.
They are, and you know, it'd be nice to get Bingham going again.
Yeah, it could be a total game changer for that area, and that's really why typically I don't get as involved in certain projects. You know, we kind of set them up, you know, fill some needs here and there. We've rolled our sleeves up for 3 years now on this because we see the impact it could have on Bingham and the surrounding towns, and we feel it's significant enough to take up a lot of our time on it. So,
one thing you brought up to me just as we were going on the air was you're involved in a project out at Eaton Mountain in Skowhegan, and that has been dormant here for a few years, and it really was a much beloved ski area. Yep. And a great, what I call feeder mountain for some of the bigger mountains, like Sugarloaf, for example. And a great place to learn to ski, and I still see a bunch of Skowhegan skiers up at Sugarloaf who learned at Eaton Mountain. Yeah. So what's happening? Yeah,
so in my previous role, I still tried helping Eaton Mountain get top to bottom skiing back online because it stopped in 2009, I believe. Yeah. And anything with a ski mountain is very expensive. And, you know, so early on in my role here, you know, we kind of tried helping the mountain out a little bit. And then it closed, you know, they were only offering tubing, which people liked, but still you had a ski mountain you weren't utilizing. And so since early in 2020, the charter school in Cornville created a Eat Mountain Foundation, and they needed classroom space during the pandemic, and they have a outdoor recreational and small business program.
Yeah.
And they said, we can utilize this property for our students, plus have a classroom. And so they quickly engaged me and voted me as chairman of the board when I wasn't at the meeting.
That happens a lot.
And so the charter school leased the mountain from us for a couple of years, and that has come and gone. And so now we're growing our board. We just received our tax exempt status a couple of weeks ago. That was a big hurdle. And now we're looking, and we have a 20-year lease with a private owner. And so now we're looking at purchasing the mountain on behalf of the foundation. And so the model we're looking at is, it's a small ski mountain. It's expensive to run. There's probably no profit in it. But for the nonprofit foundation, that's okay. We need to break even, hopefully, and offer, lift accessible skiing. And we'll keep tubing too, to the public. I grew up skiing there. I learned to ski there. There's generations that did that. The night skiing was huge because 4:30 in the winter, either you pack it up or you need night skiing.
That's right.
And so, just a tremendous opportunity for the greater Skowhegan area. When I have some negative feedback, I said, we have a ski mountain in our backyard, and I'll be damned if we don't do everything we can to get that back online.
And that ski mountain is, it's interesting. I mean, it's I call it small, medium-sized mountain. It's more mountain than just about any of the smaller ski areas that are still operating in the area. And it's located pretty geographically in a good spot. I mean, Skowhegan is easy. Waterville,
it's 5
not
minutes
far
from downtown.
Not even that far from Bangor.
Yep.
To come over here and there you make people pretty happy. A lot of people pretty happy if you could get that going again.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the ski team in Skowhegan would love to train here rather than going to Titcomb Mountain.
Yeah,
that's a good place.
They've engaged with us, and I think the problem with Eaton is it needs everything. It needs a new lift.
Yeah.
The water ponds for snowmaking need to be improved, grooming and snowmaking equipment, and really the lodge. So are we starting from scratch? Close to it. And the thought with that is we want to use it year round too. Yeah. So in our overall planning, it's year round access to trails, and it can be hiking and biking. Yeah. There's a ton of trail improvements and development going on in the area.
Yeah.
Really nothing like the terrain at Eaton Mountain though. So the fat tire or serious mountain biker loves all these local trails, but they'll be very attracted to the Eaton slopes for sure. So we want community input. We want the community to be out there and enjoy that. And really, for our youth in the area, not every kid plays basketball, wrestles, or plays hockey in the winter. You know, so what are these kids doing? I mean, it's probably a lot of that. But so we can shuttle kids from schools like they used to, get them out there for the afternoon after school.
That'd be ideal. You could work with maybe Denise at the Skowhegan Rec Center to do that. That would be fantastic.
So that I feel like with all the recreational opportunities the Greater Skowhegan area has, that's a huge piece that could add to the portfolio.
Got any ties to Arcticus, which is the folks that developed Saddleback?
We do.
And they may be able to give you some ideas or some help.
Yeah, we've been really fortunate. We've had Sugarloaf out there. We've had Sunday River out there, Lost Valley, Shawnee Peak.
They'd love to have this mountain going.
So they all view, as you mentioned, it's a feeder mountain. So eventually these kids learn to ski well enough, want some more difficult terrain, and that's fine. Yeah. It'll come with a higher price, but it's a local mountain that you can drop your kids off and come back in an hour or 3 or 4. And we're looking at rental programs that can be free or extremely cheap. It's very expensive to outfit your 4 kids in new gear every year as they keep growing.
Yeah, you would know.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, we want people back out there enjoying that. And, we think we're on a pretty good track. We have some long-term planning and costs we're close to finishing up. And we're doing it slow and steady, I think the right way. We don't want to hop into something and have it fail.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, exciting.
Yeah.
Anyways, to see that, and as I said, there would be a lot of support from the community in the whole area to have that back again,
I think so.
for sure.
Yep.
I'd be remiss. I've used up. I've left but 10 minutes here, but remiss if we don't talk about broadband.
Yep.
Because that's a big thing going on in the county, and of course you did a survey of towns to see what the existing infrastructure was.
Yep.
And speeds and as a result of that survey, I think you're forging ahead and you're dealing with some of the big cable companies, and what did I read? TDS and Prime Choice or something.
Premium
like
Choice. Yep.
Excuse me, Premium Choice.
Yep.
Over in Bangor, and is it Consolidated that's got this big grant to
Yeah.
go ahead? So what is happening? Are we getting close?
We're very close. In 2018, in 2016, we had a countywide report, and it really starts with the data on this. A lot of the providers, they don't view a lot of Somerset County as attractive at all because they're 60, 70 years to their return on their investment. A lot of rural Somerset County residents like their privacy. So when you have a quarter-mile driveway where you're a mile from each home, that's great for you, but it's really hard to connect to everyday luxuries like the internet. So with that study, we came up with a cost and where there were gaps in service, and we couldn't get any interest. And at that point, the state grant round was under $1 million for the entire state every year. And so we had success. We connected Cambridge with Premium Choice Broadband, and that was fiber to the home, which is all the speed you'll ever need for the same price as what they had. And that was with a state grant.
Yeah.
A year later, we ran fiber from Greenville to Rockwood over to Jackman with Premium Choice, fiber to the home. And there was 10 or 15 miles without any poles. So they had to put the poles in.
Yeah.
Not an attractive build, but Premium Choice stepped up and said, well, this is what we do. We serve these remote locations. And so, that was 1,500 properties. Cambridge was over 200. And so we're making some progress. And then as a lot of other programs and industries, the money started flowing from the CARES Act, and a lot was designated for rural broadband. So in 21, we revised our countywide plan. We drove every roadway in the county, identified what was on the poles, what properties were where. And we've shared all that information with the towns because they can use it for their 911 database. They have a lot of gaps in some of their property locations. And then we cost it all out. And, it was 50 to 60 million. We didn't look at wireless connectivity too much because we figure if we can do fiber to the home, it never bogs down, it doesn't slow. If we do this with fiber, we only have to do it once. And so we sent it out to ISPs, or internet service providers, and got 3 proposals. We're looking at a countywide utility district, publicly owned, for 8 months. That was a lot of meetings, and then 2 other private providers. And the requirement for town funds, local funds, was too high. I mean, there's just no way these towns would do it. And so we reached out to Consolidated, and they had no interest. And we reached out again and really nudged them, and they said they'd look at it. And a couple weeks later, said, all right, we're going to put in for a state grant, which they received in January. And it was close to 10,000 properties. It was all fiber to the home. The price is the same, and it includes if you have electricity in Skowhegan and Cornville, you're open, and it's parts of Canaan and Madison, but it was close to $9 million grant. So the grant size of locations and dollars was the largest ever in Maine, but we were ready, for this. So a lot of other communities weren't, but they're catching up quick. Yeah. Because again, you need that data to then even start this conversation. So TDS is also looking at we call it regions. You're rural when you have a north and a far north.
Yeah,
region.
yeah.
But TDS is looking mostly at the east and west parts of Somerset County. The Athens, Ripley, Cambridge area, and then Emden, New Portland, and so they're going to build that fiber on their own dime. So we're trying to help them make sure they serve every property that they can, and that only really leaves, the southern part, the greater Skowhegan area is pretty well served now. The big gap now is the Route 201 corridor, and we have 2 interested parties in that, plus a state federal grant they applied for. So theoretically, we're looking at total coverage throughout the whole county, and it's only taken 10 years. So, yeah. But
well,
it always came down to funds.
The economics, just without grants and so forth, just didn't make sense for.
Yep.
So, and I understand that it's a big county, with very rural, not very populated.
Yep.
It's hard to make the numbers. Consolidated is doing what towns? Skowhegan.
Yeah, Skowhegan, Cornville. Cornville's had horrible service.
Yeah.
So they're doing all of Skowhegan and Cornville, parts of Canaan and Madison, and now we're hoping they have serious interest in Route 201. So that'd be Bingham, Moscow, Caratunk, Forks, West Forks, and so if we can connect that, during the pandemic we had a lot of potential properties be turned down because there was no connectivity.
Yeah.
And so, the infrastructure, the network part of it, we feel we're in really good shape. There's another factor, and with broadband is just digital inclusion and equity. So do you have access to the internet? Okay, you do. Do you know how to use it? And people laugh, but I mean, if you never had it, you've never had it, Right. So, we have a state grant running this regional and tribal broadband partnership program, we call it. And it's working with Somerset Public Health and KV-CAP, adult ed centers and the libraries of, what's your clientele look like? Do they need help in training? And it's all free training. It's internet safety, how to use Microsoft Office. Is it worth disconnecting your satellite to stream service now? Mm-hmm. Is it worth disconnecting your landline because you can have voice over phone over fiber? So, we feel good. We're bringing the service to them, and then we're going to train them how to use it. So we're heavily involved in broadband this year, more so than ever.
Well, I think that's pretty exciting. And of course, if you have broadband throughout Somerset County, then more businesses and people who need to work remotely, as well as schools, so forth. This is all it's gonna benefit the economy of the county.
Yeah, we're doing some data crunching, doing a lot of surveys, and our goal is to provide devices cheap, so it can be a laptop or a home computer or a hotspot or an iPad, and then as we polish up this program, we're sending it to the state, who's then applying for federal funds, and if we're a recipient of that, we'll have years worth of funds to continue the training, education, and affordable devices. And so we actually purchased somersetbroadband.org, and we'll have all that information up there on what services where. Do you want free training? Do you need a cheap device? Affordability is a huge issue. Can you afford it? No. Do you qualify for federal subsidy on programs or service? And we'll help them with all that. So,
Very exciting times.
Yeah.
And, I'm sure we didn't cover everything that I thought I was going to cover this morning, but I rarely do. But we covered a lot of good stuff,
Yeah.
and I really appreciate you having you here this morning, Christian. And so Christian Savage from Somerset Economic Development, he's the executive director there. And we've learned a lot of good stuff this morning, and now you know.